Gut Check.
Welcome to Gut Check. This started out as a series of articles I started writing at tsscnews.com before that site imploded, and I've tried carrying it forward to my new site, bltn.net, but I figured I'd try and see if it works in a video format. Generally, it's where I look at various announcements and things and basically listen to my gut, describing whether I think it sounds good or not. And today we're here to talk about Sega's Sonic Frontiers. This is the latest mainline 3D Sonic game following 2017's Sonic Forces. But so far, Sonic Frontiers seems to be a massive departure for the Sonic franchise, moving away from the score-based, arcade-style levels that have defined the series for decades and more towards a non-linear, open-world style game. It's different, and has the potential to be very interesting, which is what we're here to talk about. And for the diehards out there, you may know that I technically already wrote a gut check article for Sonic Frontiers earlier this year, when we got our first teaser at the environment. In retrospect, that article was a bit premature, as there wasn't really a whole lot to talk about just yet. Sega is finally starting to open up about Sonic Frontiers now, letting IGN publish a good 20 minutes of footage from the game. So now seems like a better time to collect my thoughts on what I think about the actual gameplay of Sonic Frontiers. And y'all, it ain't good. But first I want to talk about how it seems like all the leaks were true, or at least the leaks I read at any rate. The moment you say leaks from 4chan, every kid and his little brother starts crawling out from under a rock to make up fake leaks. The leaks I'm talking about came not long after Sega's first teaser trailer, when people were able to data mine the game's original name, which at the time was Sonic Rangers. From there, they cross-referenced it with 4chan posts made almost 2 years ago from users claiming to be part of a focus test for the game. Generally speaking, a focus test is when a studio like Sega grabs random people, sits them down, and has them ingest a particular piece of unreleased media. You hear about focus groups a lot for movies, where people will get to watch a rough cut of a film months or even years before it releases in theaters. This is done to get a sense of whether or not a given project will be successful, so that problems can be fixed and plans can be made for marketing and advertising. If you are chosen for a focus group, you usually only interact with the product once, giving your feedback anonymously and are sent on your way, where you are usually bound to secrecy and forced to wait for the end result. From what I can remember, the focus test leak said Sonic Rangers was an open-world game where Sonic wakes up on the Starfall Islands with amnesia. Sonic had a new ability called the spin cycle, where he could run circles around objects, sort of like doing a paraloop in Nights into Dreams on the Sega Saturn. Combat was said to be very brainless and mashy, with Sonic using a flurry of punches and kicks to deal with enemies. Comparisons were made to Breath of the Wild with a generic fantasy forest setting. But instead of Zelda's shrines, it was said that Sonic would enter cyberspace, which were more traditional style levels that played like Sonic Generations. Finishing a cyberspace level would earn Sonic a Chaos Emerald. The focus test ended when the player became supersonic and climbed a Titan-sized enemy. Though the game has now been renamed to Sonic Frontiers, all of the focus test leak is here. We have the Breath of the Wild comparisons, the mashy combat, the spin cycle ability, and climbing titans. All that's missing is the cyberspace levels, but the IGN hands-on preview has confirmed that those are also in the game, we just haven't seen them yet. And when it was described in the leaks, it sounded like it could be interesting. Seeing it in motion now, the one question I can't escape is, does Sonic Team even want to be making Sonic games anymore? Because I mean, who has ever played a Sonic game and asked for this? What does Sega think a Sonic game is supposed to be? Because it isn't this. When you think about the gameplay of Sonic the Hedgehog, what do you think of? Probably something that's fast, simple to control, maybe a bit of a platformer, a bit of a roller coaster with some elements of pinball, right? That's the signature Sonic the Hedgehog style. You can take away everything else, but as long as you leave those core elements, that's Sonic to me. And Sonic Frontiers, man, I don't know. Like, straight up, Sonic the Hedgehog doesn't punch things. I mean, yes, you out there, you don't have to leave a comment. I know there are games where Sonic punches things, but it's sort of like Sonic driving a car. There are games where Sonic drives a car because everybody else is driving cars, but Sonic is not known for owning or driving a car. In a similar vein, Sonic the Hedgehog does not punch things. Sonic rolls into a ball and cuts through robots like a buzzsaw because he's a hedgehog, and that's unique to something hedgehogs can do, apparently. And why are we solving Zelda puzzles? Who plays all of the past Sonic games ever made and sees this as a series where players want to slow down and do brain teasers? Is anyone out there asking for Sonic games with more tile puzzles? Because it doesn't make any sense to me. Don't take this to mean that I'm against change. Let's take The Legend of Zelda as an example, since it keeps coming up. So you have Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64, which was at one time named the greatest game ever made. After Ocarina of Time came out in 1998, there was a stretch of games that clearly built off of its ideas as a base. There was Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword. Then in 2016 we got Breath of the Wild, which was something totally new and different for the Zelda series, and Breath of the Wild is basically my favorite Zelda game of all time. I've put like 300 hours into that game. Or Mario, right? Mario's always changing. Super Mario 3D Land was very different from Super Mario Galaxy, and Super Mario Odyssey was different from both of those games, and I loved them all. But there's a right way to change things and a wrong way to change things, and to me, it seems like nobody at Sega knows what Sonic the Hedgehog is, and maybe never has. So we get games like this, or Sonic Lost World, or Sonic Boom, or Sonic and the Black Knight. Games that seem to forget what Sonic is supposed to be. That's why Sonic Mania was so important, right? Because it was a bunch of Sonic fans telling Sega directly, this is what we love about Sonic the Hedgehog, a roller coaster platformer with pinball elements. And instead, we've got Sonic Frontiers, a game that, at least in the footage we've been given, barely resembles what we would normally think of as a Sonic game. Like, even the worst Sonic games were at least identifiable as Sonic games. Sonic Frontiers doesn't even look like that. People are cracking jokes about Sega hire this man like it's one of those gross fan-made Unreal Engine tech demos. But to say that Sonic Frontiers looks like a fan game is an insult to fan games. Fan games gave us projects like Sonic Rebel Blast 2 and Sonic GT. Those look and play like Sonic games should. And what's the most embarrassing part about this is you can't even say Sonic Frontiers was rushed this time. Those focus test leaks were from nearly 2 years ago, and they described the exact game we're seeing right now. That means Sonic Frontiers has been in development probably since 2019 or even 2018. And after all that time, this is what they have to show us. Sonic doing Zelda puzzles and punching Phantasy Star Online monsters in a bland open world. I'll repeat that again. We have verified evidence that this game has been in development for at least 3, probably even 4 years. I just want to let that sink in. I think now more than ever, I want to know what's going on at Sega. I want to know how this was pitched, I want to know how this was budgeted, and I want to know how this was developed. I want to know what led to such an obviously dumb idea lasting this long without anyone bringing up the fact that the game barely has anything to do with Sonic the Hedgehog. Was this a situation like 12 Angry Men, where one guy single-handedly convinced the entire development team that this was the correct thing to do? I get the idea of wanting to try something different, to reinvigorate the Sonic franchise with new ideas. But it's like Mario, right? For as different as a new Mario game can be, you always know it's a Mario game. They pick ideas and gameplay that always feel like Mario. Even when Super Mario Odyssey is being very different, it's still anchored in the Mario universe. There are always coins and Goombas and little touches to identify it as a Mario game. The problem with Sonic Frontiers is that it feels deeply uncharacteristic on almost every level. I really want to know what the goal is with this game. I want to know what they think this will accomplish for the Sonic franchise, because I don't think it aligns with what most people want. If you think this game looks cool, I don't think you actually want to be playing Sonic games. because this isn't one of those. This is yet another signifier that Sega doesn't know what people liked about Sonic and are just kind of throwing random ideas at the wall to see what sticks. And like a lot of games to come before it, they seem to be missing the target. Like, it's so obvious now. I couldn't understand why Sega wasn't showing the game before, why they were bothering with all these little teasers that were only showing environmental shots but no gameplay. It might have been because they were afraid to show it, because they knew it looked like this and they knew what the reaction would be. And yet that would also imply that they knew that this was a bad idea. I'm not against the idea of an open world Sonic. I think there's a lot of smart things that can be done when you give Sonic a massive open space to play around in. Being a character focused on speed, having lots and lots of room to run around is paramount. It's just everything else that seems to be the problem. I would love nothing more than to be wrong right now. It would be great if this ended up like another Sonic Unleashed, where it's something that turns out to be a pleasant surprise. But if I'm listening to my gut, well, it's saying that this doesn't look like a Sonic game, and the fact that they wasted so much time and so much effort on this idea is deeply sad. The only thing I will say is that I guess I kind of like what's suggested of the boost system here. For those of you who remember my How Do We Fix Sonic video, you'll remember I pitched changing Sonic's boost into more of a run button. A lot of you immediately jumped to thinking about Sonic Lost World, which wasn't anything like what I was describing. But that's on me for not describing it very well, I guess. The system I was describing in that video is probably a little more closer to the headbutt from Spyro the Dragon, something a little more strategic and not so over the top. And that's kind of what the boost looks like in Sonic Frontiers, though it's also hard to tell from this footage. But that's literally the only thing in this footage that looks even remotely interesting, and even then, that's a hard maybe. The rest of Sonic Frontiers looks... I mean, despite everything I just said, I don't want to say it looks bad, but it looks like you dropped Sonic the Hedgehog into somebody else's game. It just does not look like what I want from a Sonic game. And I know I can complain up and down about Sega constantly pandering to nostalgia, and yet here I am complaining about something new and different. But this is the extreme opposite direction. This is like ordering from Taco Bell and getting a pepperoni pizza. It just doesn't fit. There are some things you just don't do. Sonic Frontiers is a bad idea after a string of bad ideas. And whatever Sega is doing that lets these bad ideas keep happening, it desperately needs to change, because this is embarrassing. Future Blaze here. On the last day of producing this video, Sega released even more gameplay footage of Sonic Frontiers, some of which seems to be a direct response to the IGN footage. This new footage does look a little better, with an emphasis on Sonic being more nimble during combat and puzzle solving. It's just weird, because according to IGN, the video they were allowed to release was provided by Sega themselves, so it's like Sega is doing damage control for their own gameplay. More impressions are also coming out from the Summer Games Festival, and some seem to express a weird, unexpected fondness for Sonic Frontiers, and I don't know what to make of it. These are the perils of trying to form thoughts on something during an active preview cycle, so I can get a video out in a timely fashion. I still stand by what I said though. Sonic isn't a melee fighter, and doing Zelda puzzles is uncharacteristic. There's a large segment of this game that is deeply un-Sonic. But there's a part of me starting to wonder if there's more here than we saw at first blush. I was already starting to feel that way when I finished my script last week, something you may have picked up on. That being said, I'm most curious about the so-called cyberspace levels, the ones that play like Sonic Generations. If there's enough of those and they play relatively well, I could see it making or breaking Sonic Frontiers for a lot of people, myself included. I guess the only way to know for sure is to just wait and see. And maybe consider supporting me on Patreon so that I can afford to cover Sonic Frontiers when it releases. Anyway, this is the proper end of the video now, so roll the credits. Hey everyone! Bit of a shorter video this time around, but I wanted to get this out in a timely manner. I've been thinking of turning my gut check articles into videos for a while now, and this seemed like a good excuse. And shorter videos means I can put them out faster, which is a good thing. Not every video has to be a 20+ minute ordeal, especially considering I have some very long videos in the works for the future. If you like this video, drop a like, consider subscribing, and maybe ring that notification bell. If you really like the video, consider giving me money on Patreon. Patreon donors get early access to the Discord, where I have a special channel set up just for donors where I talk about upcoming unreleased projects. Giving me money on Patreon also lets me do fun things like pay my bills and buy food, so be sure to give that a look. Special thanks goes out to Logan, Minka Cola, Rose, Setsune, Keith S, Big Knife, L, This Dorky Guy, Melko Driggs, Fiesta, J-Rag, Ryan L, Anders, Ashley, Sam B, and Sabrina. Also, welcome new Patreon supporters, Edboy, Jet Set Set, SoFox, Jackson, The Partitioner, and Hardyfella. Wow. If you don't like Patreon or can't use it, I have a whole page set up on my website, bltn.net, where you can find alternative ways to support me. You can send money or even buy things off of an Amazon wish list, which is probably useful given my birthday is next month. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll hopefully see you in another video eventually.